All right, so welcome everybody to our November webinar. Our topic for this afternoon is contractor approved specifications. I am Tina Montone. I'm the industry liaison with Conspectus. Our speaker today is Steve Gantner. He is our executive vice president out of St. Louis, Missouri. We also have on our general manager of Conspectus Cloud, Doug Bevel, our director of sales, Ted Kenny, and we have Chris Price, who is on. Chris, if you also don't mind letting folks in as they come in, like Stephen. We also have Dave Stutzman, who is our president, as well as the brains behind Conspectus Cloud. So honored to have him on. And also being in attendance is Chris Rickey, who is our Topeka specifier. So welcome, everybody. Let me click back my screen here. So, like I said, Steve Gantner is going to be presenting. And if you are familiar with Menti, we would like to know who else is here on the project team. So if you could go to menti.com, either on your phone or on another screen in another browser, and type in the numbers 2230-8586. And you should just be able to type freely in there and let us know what your role is on the project team. Give it a
Curious to
couple
see
of
what, yeah, we're curious to see what you all do for your respective companies.
Yep, this will also help Steve make sure he maybe tweaks a little couple of his answers to the audience.
Project manager and engineer, okay. And while we're doing this, please feel free to unmute and ask questions as well.
Yes, we're happy to make this interactive to give a little bit of idea too of how this webinar is going to roll. It is going to be question and answer, conversational. Hopefully give some really great information specifically from the design builder perspective and specifications. And then the second half will be a peek into demo into the actual platform. So taking the information that we learned on the first half and applying it in the tool in the second half. Okay. So you have two specifiers, contract relations, scope coverage. Great. Bid management. What is QTO for the project managers?
Good question.
Quantity takeoff.
Okay.
Quantity takeoff. Okay. So do you
That's
work with conceptual estimators, or how does that work?
Well, technically my job title is estimator, but I don't do much estimating. My ownership tells us how much it's going to cost. So I do more of the bid management. I do the quantity takeoffs. So my president of construction can kind of build his own budgets and know how much things should cost when we're doing scope reviews, schedule values, those kind of things. So,
Okay.
you know, I use takeoff software, Bluebeam and PlanSwift to create quantity takeoffs to help make sure that our the bids we're getting in, the quotes we're getting in are relevant to really, like, they know what they're doing. So
Perfect. Makes sense. You're gonna love this, I think. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, definitely jump in if you have any specific questions. So hopefully we'll be able to,
And the person who signed in as a PM engineer, what sort of engineering and what kind of project management are you doing? If you don't mind.
Mechanical engineer.
Okay.
Specifically, but yeah, I do manage hospitals and lab projects.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you. All right. So as a design build in the design build community, fulfilling a responsibility requires putting together the right team of designers, specifiers, construction experts, and constructors to optimize project costs and performance. It also means balancing sometimes conflicting priorities and managing the intricate logistics required to deliver a project on time and on budget. Doing this while assuring profitability, collaboration, and conflict management is no easy task by any measure, but it is absolutely possible. Steve, can you take us through our approach to specifications and how we can help design builders accomplish these goals?
Yeah, we can. So what you see on the top part, the traditional approach, we've got our traditional silos of work that you normally see in a project. You've got the concept design, schematic design, design development, and so on through the project. And what you notice is the gaps in between the silos. And what we're finding is, or what we found in our history, and Dave is the one who created this, is that the gaps are where knowledge falls off, or where people trade team members, or just generally not carried forward. And what happens is, if you're familiar with the process, schematic design happens, and then it's sent off maybe to an estimator if they do that, or somewhere else, and they come back and they make decisions made upon that based upon those information, and then they move on to the design development, all the while progressing things forward, but not always making the best decisions at the time. And at the same time, you should be developing your specifications for the project, beginning with a narrative. And then if you can define outline specification, we kind of take it through design development as beginning of construction documents for specifications, and then taking it through the final construction document phase and construction, which inevitably that gap between CDs and construction ends up being value engineering or cost cutting. Excuse me just a minute. Take the squeaky toy away. Sorry. Hazards of working from home. But our approach, Conspectus approach, is to use UNIFORMAT as a cohesive place to track and document information. So there are no gaps, and the continual documentation helps validate as we move through the process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But there are no gaps. Hopefully, we're documenting things in a way that results in fewer RFIs and limited amount of VE or rework required, because we're making those decisions with the owner's consent and everyone involved's consent. So, does anyone have any questions on that? If not, we can move on.
All right. So let's take a look at all the stakeholders and how they're connected. The current structure of the design build team looks like this. You have the design build entity in a relationship with the owner. Who does the contractor also have a relationship, and how does the information flow up and down to them as a point of contact with the owner?
Okay. So if you're not familiar with it, in the traditional design build relationship, the only person that has a contract with the owner is the design builder. The design builder then goes out and subcontracts for architectural engineering design. They will go out and talk to product manufacturers or product representatives, represented by the center there, and they'll go out and get subcontracts or partners to work on the actual construction themselves. The design builder may or may not self-perform some of the work, depending on how comfortable and what kind of a firm they are. But from there, it's up to the architect and the subcontractor then to do their work. And what we're showing here is the architect or engineer will then hire or perform specifications on their own, and the subcontractor will do their own estimating. What we're finding is that we're often being left out of the game, so to speak, until the very end, like traditional design bid build, where specifications and cost estimating don't really happen as we're moving along. So what we're proposing is something a little bit different. So what we're proposing is we move the specifications and the conceptual estimating or the estimator up to work under that tier of the design builder, or bring them in earlier along with the subcontractors and the architects, engineers, because if we're working hand in hand with the design build contractors and the subcontractors and the product reps, everyone gets a seat at the table and has input onto what is important. We do an exercise. We have a presentation where we do an exercise that shows the value of bringing someone in early, because when you bring them in early, all people have a voice, and you get the best decisions made earlier in the project. Sort of like the book, getting big things done. We're thinking slow and acting fast, or put it another way, go slow to act fast, or go slow to go fast. So that's what we're proposing.
Okay, as a design builder, they face what arguably could be called the most complex set of challenges of any stakeholder in a construction project. Constrained only by the owner's project requirements, they must assume from the start almost total responsibility, along with a large share of the risk for every aspect of planning and executing both the design and construction. One of the most effective ways for design builders to reduce financial risk is by buying out as much of the project as soon as possible. To do this in the earliest stage, and especially for issuing the first work packages, they must often rely on great extent on the preliminary credible information. So, Steve, what factors must be looked at to achieve this risk mitigation?
Well, first and foremost, what we need to do is validate the owner's project requirements. We want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what their intent is behind the project, because they're the ones with the money, they're the ones with the idea, and they're the ones that have to live with it at the end. So we want to make sure we have a good understanding of what those project requirements are. After that, they got to work with the engineers and designers and design build team to establish the design intent of the project, to make sure that we're fulfilling those project requirements. After that, we're going to want to synchronize the documentation and construction to make sure everything works together and that everything can be delivered to the site in a timely manner to get constructed in an efficient manner. All of this is meant to meet deadlines and to drive efficiency, because what we're trying to do is like I said, we're trying to get fewer RFIs. We really want the information documented up front so that there are no hiccups during the construction process. And actually, with the next bullet point, to simplify procurement. And the result of this will be minimizing VE and reducing the amount of RFIs we should see on the job. So you might be asking yourself, how do we go about doing that? Well, there are several ways to do that, but right now, the best way to do it is using UNIFORMAT. And for those of you who may or may not be familiar with UNIFORMAT, UNIFORMAT is a systems-based organizational structure. It's similar to MasterFormat in its organization. However, it's based upon systems itself, whereas MasterFormat is based on work results, what you're going to end up with when you're done with the project. CSI put out something a while back called Preliminary Project Description, but that's not really an applicable description or name for it, because there's nothing preliminary about it. It's really could be used for carrying out the entire process. So we prefer to call it at Conspectus a system performance description. And we're going to show you in a little bit why we called it a systems performance description, but it is system based. And UNIFORMAT is also used, if you're not familiar with it, cost estimating software and cost estimating. The systems are similar. Any questions? I want to make sure we stop and pause and make sure we're clear. If there's none, we can move on.
All right. So looking at the OPR, let's start with that, the owner's project requirements. What is defined in the OPR?
Well, you're going to give a simple building program. The owner's going to give you what they need to function in the building as they're operating their business. The owner's going to say what their needs are. They may have request documents, or they may have documents that, well, I don't. I forgot why we put owner requested documents in there, Tina, because we're going to provide the documents for the owner requested items. So we're gonna provide information in here that documents what the owner has requested, to make sure that we conform with the OPR. This may include some standards, and items like that, but we want to do it all in a performance-based system. And it's also in a checklist format to make it easy to make sure that we understand. And we'll show you that in just a second. Here's the basic level 2 of UNIFORMAT. This is element 0. This is an addition. So let me back up a minute. UNIFORMAT is based on, there are 2 versions of UNIFORMAT, if you may or may not be aware of it. There's a UNIFORMAT that's been developed by ASTM, which was which was completed in conjunction with the National Institute of Science, NIST, and there was an UNIFORMAT system developed by CSI. Basically, what we've done is combined the CSI UNIFORMAT and the ASTM UNIFORMAT and taken elements from both. Elements A through F, or G, I believe, are done by CSI or ASTM. Elements 0 through NZ were borrowed from CSI. And what you're seeing here is element 0, level 2 or level 3, I mean, is 30 procurement requirements. And that's where we fill in the information as we get it from the owner, put it in there. We want to document how they want to procure the project. Is it going to be, well, we're talking about design bid or design build. So we're going to put all the information in there with the help of the design builder of how they're going to procure elements of the construction. You can see other elements in their substructure. UNIFORMAT is based upon the actual building itself from the ground up, outside in. So what you see is a substructure. So it's going to encompass everything from foundations to footings, waterproofing, things like that. And then we're going to move on to B, which is the superstructure, which is how you get the building and the enclosure. And we'll move on to interiors, and then you get into systems. Tina, there you go.
All right, so let's take a look at the content that supports the OPR. How can this information be used to establish the OPR as well as start to influence the design, or as I have here, direct the design?
Yeah, first of all, we want to note the performance requirements. What do you want your building to perform like? What are the requirements for individual systems, elements within your building that need performance? We have a mechanical engineer on the line here. Some things that might affect performance requirements for the mechanical systems might be glazing. We might want to identify what insulated glass is made out of and what the winter and summertime U values would be, or what the visible light transmittance should be inside the building. And we want to document that early. If possible, we want to document required materials by the owner. They may have agreements with people. Sherwin-Williams comes to mind. Some company or some health systems want to use or have a contract with a paint manufacturer. They may have something similar with a door hardware distributor in the area. So we want to make sure that we document those items quickly so that there's no wasted time or effort to price something that will never be put into the project. Another way to do this with the owner required materials, think about, I just mentioned glass and glazing. So that's sort of a commodity product. And if your buildings are far enough apart, you don't need to match the materials exactly, because many manufacturers make a similar looking and performing glass as long as you meet the requirements for the environment. On the flip side, though, if you're on a big campus and you have Cone elevators, you may not want to recommend ThyssenKrupp, because that would throw a wrench into their maintenance programs for the other systems on their building. So we want to document those items that are required. Building codes have an impact. We want to document what codes we have to comply with, what codes may throw a wrench into the design or the construction of the project, and make sure everyone's aware of those. Get that documented early, and you can work around it. If you don't realize it until the very end, you could end up having to rework drawings or specifications or, well, several things. And then finally, we want to build out the content as the information becomes known. So as you're having meetings with the owners, you want to document information. For instance, right here, we're doing element 0 again. We're documenting the description of the project. We're going to give as much as we need to tell what the project is so that people have a good idea of it. Then we'll move on to a summary. And then you can see we can even start documenting the project program. You know, how many parking spots do you need? How many acres is it on? What's the description? What's the, you know, this looks like Maker's Mansion is going to be a multifamily or some sort of massive building. So we're going to have 18 one-bedroom apartments, say, or 15 two-bedroom apartments. And we describe things as we find them out. Not, you don't wait until the very end to document your information.
Okay, so efficiency is accomplished through consistent transparency and collaboration. What should the design build contractor be able to do?
Well, the design build contractor often doesn't have a say in the documentation itself. And I talked to, for context, I was at the design build conference last week in Dallas, Texas. And one of the things I talked to design builders about was how do we get our specifications involved earlier? And about, I would have to say about half would say we don't want to have any part of that. That's the architect's responsibility. And the other half said, that's interesting. How would we do that? And what really floored me was the architect, yes, they're going to end up signing and sealing everything. But an important voice is missing in everything, is the person who's actually building it. Why don't we get their voice into it? I'm not saying that they're going to rework the spec to where it goes against everything the architect wants. They're going to have to sign and seal it. They get what they want to make them comfortable with their design. But if you have the people building it making suggestions on materials and other things that make their method of construction a little bit easier or easier to do, why wouldn't you want that and get their assistance in doing your detailing? What ends up happening then is you're making decisions together, you're having a cohesive work package go together, and it's going to be consistent. You're going to have everybody working together in one thing. I want to use an example. Curtain wall systems. I did a spec section a while ago for a design firm, and I asked them, and we encouraged the design builder, and they in turn encouraged their sub-consultant for curtain wall, their supplier of the curtain wall material, the glazer, the glazing supplier. We had the facade consultant, the architect's QA group. We had all these people in the specification working together. And the end result was a cohesive package that went out. There were no RFIs asked on that section. There were no RFIs asked on the shop drawings. There was nothing that had any stop to the flow. So it took a couple weeks to develop that section, but that goes in keeping with the go slow to go fast. Yeah, it took a little bit more time up front, but how much time did we save on the back end by not having to answer RFIs? How much time did the architect and engineers save by not having to answer RFIs? Dave showed me a Navigant study from several years ago. The average architect spends 8 hours on an RFI. That's an architect only spending that much time on an RFI. How much time does it take for then the contractor to write the RFI? How much time does it take the sub-consultant to review the RFI? Then you submit it, then you review it as an architect. All these other people are involved too. So your RFIs are generating a lot of waste, dollar waste on the job that could be going back to the owner or profit for the firms involved. So what we're essentially doing is we're reducing inefficiencies in the design. We're getting rid of inadequate documentation. The conflicting documentation doesn't even exist. And the benefit of it is you don't over document things. One of the things the sub-consultant did on that specification section was they told the architect there's no need to draw that detail. It's one of our standard details. If we're hired and they were bought out early by the design builder, they were using their details. So it worked out great.
So when you were talking about how they're communicating back, they're communicating within the document, right? Right within the specifications.
Correct. Correct. And in this example, this is an example. I can't show you the actual section we worked in, but this is a example where Dave and Ray, specifier and engineer, were working together to come up with a distribution system for chilled water pumps. And as an example, Dave started off by asking Ray a question, to talk about it when we can. Ray clarified his statement, Dave replied back, and then Ray replied back. So there's a cohesive element going on here. What you'll notice is on the right-hand side near Dave's comment, there's a little eyeball, and you can see the number 9. Well, those are 9 people that have looked at that section, or looked at this comment and could have made a comment on it or agree with what Dave has done. Similar to Ray's, and then Dave, and then Ray again. So we're going from 9 to 10 people saw Ray's, then they're back down to 8, back down to 5. So this is where very early in the project, you're documenting what we're doing. It's sort of a speak now or forever hold your peace type of thing, I like to think of. When you get 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, a year down the road, if no one said anything, then it's safe to assume that everyone's bought off on it, right? Or you bring it up in a meeting, say, hey, we're going to close this out. Comment now or you're done. This is what we're going to do. Any
So
questions?
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I just want to make sure we're given opportunities here to ask questions. I don't want to monologue. Yeah, Chris, go ahead. Unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Thanks
I
for
saw the
quick
hand go
video
up. I was
there.
excited.
Yeah.
Sorry. Don't.
I'm good.
Don't
Go
do
with
that
that one. There we go.
All right, Tina.
So ultimately, we want to meet deadlines and also simultaneously simplify procurement. So how can we achieve this?
Well, to meet your deadlines, you're documenting everything as you go. So there should be no surprises at the end, right? You're noting where the changes are being made. You're noting the changes themselves, and you should be pricing it and verifying the availability of the materials. You can make appropriate swerves here and there. So like if a material is not available, you can act accordingly and get a new material substituted in there pretty quickly that everyone agrees upon. Hopefully, your estimators are working hand in hand with the specifications. So we heard several times last week at the conference that we like conceptual estimating. We like working with people to make sure that we're pricing this project as we're moving along to make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck, saving the owner. It's amazing how much owner-focused design build really is.
Let's really dive down into what procuring the documents look like and how defining what it is, where it's going, and what the properties are.
Okay. Yeah, in the example here, we're talking specifically about the pump we were talking about. So in the description element, we don't define anything in our software this way, and we recommend that you don't come with preloaded information. It's better to leave it blank and fill it in as you know it, and said it earlier. So the description should be one sentence, and that one sentence should tell you what it is, where it is, and as much information as is needed for a conceptual estimator to go, I can price that. So for pumps, you've got what you need to buy the pump. The next thing is working with the drawings. How many pumps do I need? And then you have a good idea what it is. What we want to describe below that is performance requirements. Ideally, you know what all of these elements are. You put all that information in there, but you notice that speed, we have RPM or variable. Nothing's filled in yet. Well, that's an outstanding question. That's part of the checklist. So let's go through our document. What questions are still outstanding? Let's get answers to these. Okay. And then let me go. Performance is performance. Design requirements are the requirements of the functionality of the material. Architecturally speaking, we would put in aesthetic requirements here. But for this assembly, we're talking about, how's it going to be finished? How's it assembled? Where's it assembled? Is it wired? Is it insulated? Where is all this? And then can it be picked up and moved and put into place? There are other requirements that we'll get into in just a minute.
Okay. So how can inefficiencies produce RFIs and drive VE?
Well, inefficiencies, as any blanks or any questions that are mixed up anywhere in the process result in RFIs. If there's nothing, if it's not clear, it's going to generate an RFI, right? So what we're trying to do is use transparency. Going back to the example we showed, everyone has an opportunity to look at comments. Everyone has an opportunity to look at the project and ask questions ahead of time. If that's not clear, we want to make sure that it becomes clear so that we don't have the RFI. We do this by providing access to everybody. Everyone's welcome to the project. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but for us, access is important. So we don't charge, we're talking about software as well. We don't charge seat licenses for our project. It goes to the firm that chooses to use it, and they base it on number of people in total within that company. And then Ted can talk about that in a little bit. But we want everyone to have access. So if you've got a 10-person firm, fine. But we want you to invite everyone in the process. So you could have up to 1,000 people. I don't even want to cap it. You could have as many people as you want accessing the specifications and the early documentation, the UNIFORMAT, the SPD, to make comments and suggestions and observations on the process. This in turn encourages collaboration. The more people working together, the more you build trust and confidence and a team built around it. You're wanting to do the best thing you can for the project. So in the end, we end up with a truly quality project for the owner. Everyone can be proud of it. And hopefully everyone comes out talking to each other at the end of the project. Sometimes that doesn't always happen.
So let's take a quick look at two more examples here in this part of the presentation, and this part of the webinar is how you document in UNIFORMAT, and how can the written word then be tied to the models?
Okay. Yeah, first when we're talking about, we talked about the description, the performance, and the design requirements. What comes after that is the components. Think of the components as the individual materials going in to make up that assembly. What Tina has highlighted here is the MasterFormat section for CMU. It's unit masonry, 04-2000. So what we've done is the component then, CMU, it could become your keyword, your keynote. Couple that with the spec section 04-2000-CMU, and you know right where to go in the specification. And for simplification, hold on, back up, Tina.
Oh, sorry.
Too fast. For simplification too, you do a brief description of what you're going to look for when you get into the specification, the individual MasterFormat section. You're looking for an 8-inch normal weight CMU. Also, with this partition type, you can also link it, figuratively speaking. I'm not talking about a physical virtual link to Revit, but you would have a link in name only. C1010.10. So that dot number is something that we put in there, fixed partitions. If you have a library of assembly codes, you could put in your assembly code here. So you would use C1010 dot whatever you have for your assembly code. And then you could name it whatever your assembly code is named in your Revit model. And then you have a direct correlation. As a matter of fact, you could also drop in an image of your assembly in this area here. We could show you that in the demonstration. Now, that box that was highlighted has an active link in it. If you click that box, click that link, it will take you, without closing the tab you're in, it will take you to the MasterFormat section for concrete masonry units, and it'll take you right to that spot. So you see where we're at here. You're in the concrete masonry unit, and your spec is being developed in conjunction with the UNIFORMAT model as well. So it's saying what you know when you know it. You start building out your model anytime, or building out your specifications at any time after you've got or during your UNIFORMAT process. Any questions so far? Okay.
Okay.
I'm
just gonna throw this up here real quick before we dive into, and I'll stop sharing my screen, but I wanted to share in case you guys wanted to write down. We have Steve here, who is our presenter, and his contact information, and Ted Kenny, who is our director of sales, who I am going to I don't know if if Steve, you're going to stay at the wheel.
I think Ted, will let you drive if you'd like.
Absolutely. So I'm going to show two slides here just to illustrate kind of an important point that we haven't yet touched on. How do we enable this collaboration, right? How are we allowing all of these folks to come into the platform, comment on specifications, have this dialogue? So in a traditional software licensing model, you're paying on a per seat basis typically. There's many SaaS software solutions in the industry that are charging on a per seat basis. I'm sure you've all been through the process. We all have. When you have someone you need to add into the software that you're using on your project, you realize you've ran out of seats and you have to reach out and try and buy another seat, and your back's against the wall, you have deadlines, things like that. So Conspectus Cloud takes a different approach. Again, because we're a team of specifiers and architects first and foremost, we didn't like that model. And so we wanted to enable completely unfettered collaboration between the project team. So we provide an industry-leading licensing model that is universal. So a firm can come in and purchase one universal license to Conspectus Cloud, which I'll be showing you here in a moment. And you can add in whoever you'd like, whenever you'd like. You'll never be nickeled and dimed again to add an additional seat to your subscription. It is one single universal license for the firm. The pricing is based on firm size. I'd be happy to meet with any of you on the call today to walk you through how this licensing model works. But again, at a firm level, you can add in all of your firm staff. And then on a per project basis, like Steve has mentioned today, you can add in individuals into your individual projects and have this collaboration take place. Of course, when you are adding people into the project environment, keep in mind you have full control over what those individuals can do and the participation levels they can have within the project itself. So you can add people in just as viewers, you can add people in as viewers and commenters. If you do want to allow people to be able to edit within the specification environment, you can add them in to edit. And if you're working with outside consultants on your specifications, you can add them in as authors to the project so they can import in their specifications into the Conspectus Cloud environment. Any questions on this licensing model or any more information I could provide on it? Does it generally make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great.
While you're switching over, go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just saying it makes sense.
Okay. While you're switching over, Ted, I just wanted to mention too, we mentioned risk earlier. We're very comfortable with this and allowing anybody to be a author or someone who can make edits to the project because we have an audit trail built in as well. And the audit trail is stored separately in immutable storage. So if anything disappears, you can always see who disappeared it and ask them why. And if it was valid, you could keep it, or you can copy it back and put it back into place if you need to. So very comfortable letting anyone make comments or make changes.
It's a great point. I mean, every single aspect of every single user action within Conspectus Cloud is completely transparent. Every single user action is logged, tracked, and like Steve mentioned, is all available via an audit trail. So you really do have full control and transparency over everything that's done within the platform. So when I log into Conspectus Cloud, this is your home page. I'm going to go into the project that Steve was using today, in the clips and the slides that you saw. We'll just go over here to my projects. I'll show you, this is essentially your dashboard of all the projects that you have within your database. You can see different statuses. You can see the project name, project number. You can filter all of these too. So if I wanted to filter this alphabetically, I simply start clicking these blue bars and it will automatically filter. And I've pulled up the Maker's Mansion project that Steve mentioned. So you can just get a general overview of what the dashboard looks like for an individual project. So what you're seeing here today, up here at the top, these are your UNIFORMAT specifications or your systems and performance description specifications that we've been covering. And then down here at the bottom, this is where your master format specifications live. And I know today's topic has been on contractor approved specifications, so we really have focused in on UNIFORMAT. If there are any folks on the call today that are just developing their specifications in master format, this probably all seems extremely appealing to you, utilizing UNIFORMAT, but keep in mind, it is not essential within the platform. You can develop specifications in master format like you typically would in any other platform or in Microsoft Word. So it is not something, you don't have to adopt UNIFORMAT right away to start using the platform, but it is always there if you want to test out and use this approach and integrate it into your workflows over time.
And
So as you
actually,
can,
we do sometimes at Conspectus is we would use the system performance description to read through the documents, the drawings for the first time, and we will document sometimes what we see in the models, and we pre-populate a UNIFORMAT for our own purposes to make notes and start the specification process that way.
Absolutely. So as you can see here, this is where your UNIFORMAT sections live. Again, the nice part about these bars is that you can very easily filter them. You can, if I wanted to see what the last activity was, say in a master format section, I can simply click this and I can see someone has been in hollow metal doors today working on this section. So we'll actually go into the SPD checklist so you can see where you're adding in your UNIFORMAT specs that we've been covering today. The nice part about these checklists is they're very flexible. You can expand them quickly and easily. And then these drop downs on the right-hand side allow you to pull in specifications from anywhere within your database, in this case, UNIFORMAT specifications. So if you did know, okay, this UNIFORMAT spec maybe perhaps for your procurement requirements, it's going to be fairly similar to a last project that we'd worked on. You can simply use this dropdown and you can find all procurement requirement sections from any past project that you have within your database, pull it in from that similar project. This same checklist operates for master format as well. But again, what you're able to do here is go in and essentially add in the specs that you need based off of what you know and when you know it. So as you're documenting your owner project requirements, you're coming in and making these selections. And if I were to select roof construction here, one important point is it will select all the way up the chain and add B shell, substructure, and then roof construction. Another important point here is we don't necessarily have a full Revit integration that pulls data directly from Revit. However, and I think, Steve, you kind of briefly touched on this, if you ask your Revit team or your design team that you're working with to export out the assembly codes from Revit, that's going to come out in UNIFORMAT. And you can take that list, put it next to this UNIFORMAT checklist, add in the sections that are corresponding with the data that you've pulled from your Revit model, and then you can come into your UNIFORMAT sections like this and begin describing out your assemblies. So this is a UNIFORMAT section, and Steve, feel free to jump in here at any point if you have anything you'd like to add. But this is, just your typical structural frame concrete. It's been started to build out. Again, this is a demo account, so you're kind of seeing the framework being built out here. It's not fully complete. But like Steve mentioned, you can add in description, basis of design, your performance requirements, design requirements. And for those specifiers on the call here today, as you're documenting this information, one really key feature that we have that Steve mentioned are these links to your master format sections. And really what this allows you to do is prep for success when you're going to be building out your master format spec. So as you're documenting this information early on in the project, you get down to a components level and you're going to have concrete for our structural frame here, you can link the concrete section over to a cast in place concrete section. When I create this link, what it's going to do is it's going to add this cast in place concrete section into my project, into my master format specifications. So by the time I do get to DD and start developing the specification, I'll have this section added and it'll be pulling over some information from UNIFORMAT. And I'll show you that by switching over to our final view using this drop-down tab. And you'll see some of the information from UNIFORMAT, including a drawing has been pulled in here. Any questions so far on any of this? or Steve, please feel free to chime in. Anything you'd like to add here?
I did. I just sent you a note.
Oh,
See if
excellent.
it pops up in concrete. Go back to concrete. Under the concrete, under principal products concrete. It's gonna be hard to see because
Yeah, we have quite a few here.
click on number 4 there,
Beautiful.
and I just sent you a note.
Yeah, so what Steve is demonstrating here is really the commenting feature, and I'll pull this up as well so you can see what it looks like, what your maybe a contractor that you've added in to get information. So when Steve comments to me here using our commenting feature, and I'll click on sand and add in a comment as well, so you can see what that looks like. What you're able to do is simply click this comment button, and you're able to add in an @ symbol, and anyone you've added into your project team you can tag. So I can tag, my colleague Chris Triantos here, let's say, and I can ask him this question. And like Steve mentioned, you have these view buttons. So if you do need to get a question answered and someone hasn't responded back, but you can see that they've seen it, you can re-tag them in the question and ask them again. But this allows you to have this sort of communication. And one kind of important point that I hear from our customers consistently is, wow, this commenting feature has replaced a lot of the Bluebeam review sessions we have, a lot of the emails that go back and forth with dialogues around questions around specs. You can all contain this here. The other nice aspect of this is that, say this question has been answered and I resolve it, you'll see it'll turn blue. This becomes a matter of record on the specification. So even when this project is complete, you can always come back and reference these and say, hey, why did we change this? When did we change this? You'll always have a record of that dialogue. And just to show you here, this is the comment that came through when Steve sent it. So this is what it would look like for your project team members. When they receive a comment, you get an email about it, and I can simply click this link. It'll bring me directly to that section. I can see the comment and what section it's included in.
So what happens is when you do the @ symbol and then somebody's name that's in the project, it will send them an email notification that a comment has been made in that section. It'll tell you the section. What tends to happen in these projects is we could have a lot of questions and comments going on throughout the project. So there are ways to limit the amount of emails you get too. You can get them once a day. You can set a for once a day, or you can get them once a week. We have never, but we don't recommend you ever never receiving comments. It kind of defeats the purpose. So if you're worried about too many emails, don't worry. You'll get them first thing in the morning, 7 a.m. Eastern.
And I will mention, so you'll see here, this is, our MasterFormat cast in place concrete section. What you're seeing here, work results and principal products, this is completely unique to our Conspectus Cloud Master specifications. You'll see we have probably what you're used to seeing, our section includes and related requirements. But the reason we built this is for the purpose of pulling in data from SPD, but you can also use it just, essentially to replace section includes and related requirements. And really what we're saying here is, hey, Mr. Contractor, this is what you're going to build, and this is what you're going to build it with. And I will say on the point of comments, one kind of hub that we have for your project team to be able to show them all of the comments and questions that have happened on a project. We have our unresolved comments report, and I'll pull this up. This is going to take a minute. Yes, it's going to take a minute or two to load because this is the demo project, and there's quite a few comments on here. I also will say this is not a reflection of the slowness of Conspectus Cloud. This is a reflection of the slowness of the Kenny household's internet here. Both my wife and I work from home, so we don't have the fastest internet. While we're waiting for this to load, though, I did want to pull up a really useful tool that I know our team loves. So as you're moving through the specification, we have this feature called issues and releases, and this can be really useful as you're working with estimators on projects to be able to compare and see what has changed on a project as the team's been moving through it. And you can use this for QC reviews. You can use this for team reviews of the spec. So what this allows me to do is create an issue, which is essentially a full set or a snapshot of the entire specification at that moment in time. And I can also create releases, which is a subset of individual selections that you've selected for things like addenda. Once you create these, you can export them out for your deliverables. But this is essentially your file saving system. So it saves these versions here. And then we built in this nifty feature that allows us to compare different versions of the spec as we're moving through the project. So as you can see here, we have 50% CD. You can compare it to your 50% DD section. So I've just selected two sections here, and I'll show this comparison. So what this shows here is, at a high level, what's changed on the project. So you can see we had a number of sections that we've taken out. But then what this allows you to do is go in at a more granular level and compare individual sections, right? So this will show me exactly what's changed between these two versions. And again, this can be very helpful on the estimating side of things. So these are master format sections. I did pull up a version of a UNIFORMAT spec though. So you can see exactly what's changed between the two different versions. The nice part about any of these comparison documents, when you want to share them with your team, as long as they're added into the project, you simply cut this URL. You can send it to them on a Teams or a Slack channel, or you can send it via email, and it'll take them directly to this section. I know we hear a lot of feedback on this feature. People really love this, to be able to just see what's changed on the project as they've been moving through the different phases. Any questions on any of this? I know we're starting to get short here on time.
Yeah, are you able to change the formatting? So instead of like strike through or whatever, the color schemes, just curious.
Like the actual highlighting formatting here?
Yep.
No, you aren't, but we do always have this legend. So this allows you to be able to kind of see and reference, or anyone on the team to be able to see and reference what these changes indicate. You can export this document as well, and it comes through with track changes.
Okay.
As far as the strike throughs, though, that's part of the editing feature of the software itself. What the strike through shows, you've hidden that element, and you don't want it visible.
Agreed. Yeah, we do the same, and that's where I'm just kind of curious on just formatting. If we're trying to match something that the way we do it to send it out that way. So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, what I mean by hiding something is we don't recommend you delete paragraphs or sentences. You want to hide the sentence, and then what happens when you print it, it won't show up.
Yep. Yeah, it's like track changes, like you're saying.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, exactly.
I'll just illustrate this feature. So you can strike out content using this hide element, right? So this will strike this out. We do also have a nifty feature that allows you to kind of work off of a cleaner document. So if you're striking through a lot of information, or you've used our system of automated tagging that we have built into Conspectus Cloud, which essentially allows you to make easy selections or high-level global selections based off things like project types or the different elements of things that you're going to be including in your specs. You can get a lot of struck out content in a section here. So we do have this view capability where I can turn off hidden elements. And you'll see here, as I go through, right, it hides all of the struck out content that I have. And maybe I strike out delegated design here so you can see it. And you'll see, it doesn't automatically re-letter or renumber things. And this is kind of an important point. It just allows you to be able to know as the writer, hey, there's hidden content there. But again, if I use this final view, you'll see the system automates a lot of the editing, renumbering, reformatting of the section. So when I click this, you'll see the spec as it would come out today if I were to export it, and you'll see it's automatically relettered and renumbered everything. So we do encourage striking content out as opposed to deleting it.
Go back to the, there you go. There you go. It came in.
So as you can see here, this is a list of all of the unresolved comments. Like I mentioned earlier, when you resolve a comment, it turns blue, so it would no longer be included in this list. But this can be the list that you share with your project team. Hey, these are the questions that we have. This is the current, standing questions that are included in this project right now. Please go through and answer these questions if you're addressed or tagged in them. Any other questions from the group today? And I think Tina mentioned it at the beginning of the call. We'd be more than happy to provide a full demonstration of Conspectus Cloud. There's a lot more than what we've shown you today. And we're more than happy to provide trial accounts for anyone who'd like to get into the platform and test it out. So please feel free, invite your colleagues to the trial. We're more than happy to open things up so you can get in and test it out.
Yeah. And feel free to reach out to myself or Ted if you have any further questions. You had our contact information, and thank you for attending today. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Tina,
Thank
you
you.
want to close it out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you'll receive an email with this recording. It'll take you to our YouTube channel, so the recording will be there. If you have any questions, please reach out to any of us.